You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, Nigeria's capacity for energy security, particularly more stable power supply, got a shot in the arm a few days ago when the country's power grid got synchronized or integrated with a larger West African grid. Stakeholders in the power sector are celebrating this development, although some of them with a healthy dose of pessimism against the backdrop of Nigeria's well-known struggles with management of growth variables in the power sector. How can Nigeria make the best use of this opportunity to consolidate on the already improving power supply around the country? What can be the likely drawbacks and the political implications? For answers, we now turn to Dr. Sam Amadi, who's the director, Abuja School of Social and Political Thought, and the former chairman of Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. Good morning, Dr. Amadi. Good to have you join us on the morning show this beautiful Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
All right, thank you indeed.
Thank you for having me, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So let's talk about an area that is of interest to you, and of course you are quite knowledgeable about it. Please assess for us this new development that has got Nigeria's energy supply synchronized or integrated with that of the West African sub-region. How significant is it, and how did we get there? Does it have to do with any, with the 5 billion World Bank assisted program that was meant to have been delivered last year, or this is just something that ECOWAS on their own got together to execute? Talk to us about it.
Okay, thank you so much again for having me. How significant? Let's start with that. I think significant in some measure, and I will explain. This is a combination of processes that started maybe around 2000 and maybe 8-9 or thereabout. At least when I was chairman of NEC from 2010 to 2015, I know that this process was on board. The proposal was to have a West African power pool, which is basically saying you want to create a electricity market, West African region electricity market, so that the market will be integrated, loads can be dropped anywhere in West Africa, just like you have some part of Europe. So the notion was that West Africa is maybe a natural market in terms of how the countries are, in terms of their interdependencies, in terms of, the cultural contiguity, the geographical sameness. So it's not rocket science to know that, this could be one market. And so the notion of including the creation of West African Electricity Regulatory Commission and so on and so forth, all were on foot. But the technical, because before you can have a market, you have to have an integrated grid, meaning that if you have a generator in Benin Republic and you say you have a West African pool, you'll be able to easily send his power to that pool, and trading can happen just like a spot market or like an exchange where everybody goes in, puts a bid, gets price and buy and transmit. So this is significant in that I think at 3 levels. It's with the West African electricity market, your volume is high, capacity scale is high. The population of West African countries mean that you have a larger market, and infrastructure, utility services require economies of scale, which means if you have a larger customer base to serve, the unit cost might be low. There'll be more, incentive to expand, scale up, selling to more people. Even though Nigeria constitutes the largest chunk of the population, but again, it's significant addition. So if you're a Nigerian company in generating power here, you fancy that you could scale up, send power to Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, so on and so forth, all the West African countries. So that's also important. Again, we know that many of our grid suppliers, some of our new IPPs, find it difficult to maybe send load. They have capacity more than the Nigerian market can receive for now because of constraints of transmission network, congestion, distribution failures, and so on and so forth. Now, what a West African power pool could do for them is that it's easier. Already now, some of the Lagos area, some of those Indian IPPs are sending small bilateral trading with some of those Niger and all, Benin Republic companies there. So with this integration, you can then, in the short term, keep those companies financially buoyant because they're selling power to the West African market easily, even if the Nigerian market is constrained or congested, as the case might be. So that's another benefit. So in a sense, if this works well, it will help IPPs in Nigeria to evade the constraints in the Nigerian local market, which is mostly distribution, and then take power to the West African neighbors easily, while perhaps they wait for the constraint to get off to sell to the local market. So it's better, actually most important for those IPPs, which in itself will help to generate investment, more opportunities, because if they are selling their power, whether to Nigeria or to Ghana, then they have more capacity to maintain their plants and also to scale up. In terms of quick, immediate gain to Nigerian consumers, not much really, if any, because at this point, your distribution capacity in-house and your transmission capacity in-house, in-country rather, let me put that way, remain the same, and you might not see significant improvement or change in the quality of service in-country. So what I'm saying is that, look, if this works, the IPPs are able to sell more to the other markets, they make more money. But it doesn't necessarily mean that because you're not integrated, you're going to have a better service in Agege, or you're going to have a better service in Maitama, in Abuja, or in Guzo, or any other place in the country. So for customers, consumers at the retail side of this business, not much value addition, at least in the short term. Obviously, in the long term, with better economics, better revenue, expansion of capacity, it will trickle down significantly to them. But for now, this is good for the West African economic potential. This is good for IPPs, the Nigeria that sometimes need to sell their power. And this is good overall for Nigeria when we have a much more developed electricity market. So our IPPs, our producers can sell West Africa wide. Again, let's not forget that if there were better, stronger West African countries that have capacity, generate a lot of power, it can be a win-win in the sense that they can also send power to Nigeria to make up for shortfall, and then we are integrated, we get better power. But here, Nigeria is still the leading supplier. So it's unlike Europe, where an integrated market could mean much more symbiotic benefits for everybody. Here, it's still a low-value proposition.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Sam Amadi, on the program. But I'd like for us to just really address the elephant in the room. Nigeria's national grid has collapsed over 100 times in recent years, and yet we struggle to generate even 5,000 megawatts for our population of over 200 million people. Now, I know that you've said there's no immediate tangible benefit, but how exactly does connecting our unstable grid to West Africa help, the Nigerian consumers eventually, when you say that it's not immediate benefits? I know that one of the vision to this connection is the fact that it'll help, trade the bands as well. And we know that we have a tariff deficit in Nigeria. Talk to us about that.
Well, first, like you said, I mean, the fact that we have perennial system collapses and all that speak to vulnerability in our own grid. And that's a good point to make, that, yes, we can integrate. But again, when you integrate, you now can enforce risk and vulnerability from anywhere. So if Nigeria's grid is vulnerable, it could affect the whole system. And if any other country's system is vulnerable, it can affect. So when you integrate, you are more vulnerable to systemic risk and collapses. So it also calls for caution here, and the fact that we must make sure that maybe we build redundancies and isolations, that if something goes wrong in Benin Republic, when we ultimately have this market pool, it comes with risk. and it comes with systemic risks. And that's the point you're right to make. Now, in terms of, look, a problem in Nigeria remains the fact that we've not had structural coherence in terms of our expansion of the grid. So if we're doing 600 megawatts, and we say we've crossed this threshold, we can generate 10,000. You've already done that if you can consistently send 10,000 megawatts to customers. If you have not, it's still theoretical. It's like, okay, yes, for example, today, the generators claim with some validity that they can generate 8,000, perhaps going to 10,000 megawatts. And they're looking at their nameplate, meaning capacities they have installed and possible gas availability. But the story is that you can't send 5,000 to homes and businesses. So the real status of our electricity market would then be what we can send consistently to homes and businesses, and that's less than 5,000 megawatts. It does not matter the theoretical proposition. Yes, if we improve the downside, I mean, the Gencos can uptake energy, they have the capacity, reliability, send it, then that potential 10,000 or 8,000 that we have now turns to actual delivery of megawatts to home. So what's the problem? The problem is that I think that there's been these two problems in my view. One is modeling. The notion we started with of private, the private sector will drive this sector perhaps wasn't the right one. It's too fundamentalist because the private sector itself has strength and weakness. And this weakness is that the private sector does not take risk. It does not socialize the risk itself. So if your system is endemic, has endemic vulnerability, risks, factors, the private sector will not come there to solve your social risk problem. So you need to invest in the network yourself. You need to provide those things, and then they come in and patch and deliver more efficient service for you, but they're not going to solve the structural inefficient problem for you. And that's what you see with places like Egypt, where they have not yet, the state is still taking care of most of those things, and they are efficient states. So this is a problem. Nigeria's inefficiency, deeply entrenched inefficiency, is being solved through outsourcing. So the government says, okay, let's get the private sector. But they realize down the line that the things that the government should do and be efficient at will invariably militate against the efficiency that the private sector brings, efficiency of funding, efficiency of managing the network, and profitability. So if you look at this market, it's profitable for the investors. If you look at these Gencos and Gencos, they're declaring profit because they are managing their costs, which is what they go, and then being profitable. But if you look at the service delivery, if you look at transformation of network, it's not happening because those days, the private sector is not the best. They have to work with an efficient public sector. So when I was NEC chairman, I made this case that, look, you don't just privatize. You can't outsource public sector inefficient. You have to fix it so that and the private sector efficiency can work together. That's why we have a problem. So if we integrate, this is a talking point. We sign off, we have finally done the thing. We've integrated, but really, honestly, beyond technical language, it means nothing in terms of the evolution of our electricity market, because these countries are appendages. I mean, the Republic lives off Nigeria, Niger, So what are they bringing to the table? So Nigeria has to be bullish and say, let's improve our sector here, let's improve our grid, then we sell power, because this is supposed to be Nigeria's market. Nigeria is the one who's supposed to supply this West African power pool if really, when it finally takes off as an exchange market. It's the Nigerian generators who show the capacity, because Nigeria has a population to drive this market. So we now use them as a way of creating co-prosperity zone in West Africa. Stimulus should come from Nigeria. So this shouldn't be used as a sign that things are getting better. No. It's good for the NGOs, international NGOs who want a West African market, and we can attract some funds from this. So Nigeria has integrated, okay, some of the projects, they can, TCN can get some, ISO can get some grants. But ultimately, in terms of strategic and transformation of our sector, this is not a driver. This is just so small and peripheral. What we need is to improve the efficiency from the public sector, private sector, and then we'll be able to say, okay, in the next 5-10 years, we can have a 20,000 market that is 20,000 in real delivery, not 20,000 in potential. Oh, we can generate this, but we're generating 5,000. That's not where we're going. So I think it's a deeply, buried inefficiency, and it's a modeling problem, number one, and a project management problem. You see, until government becomes less corrupt, more efficient, and strategic, and real. I mean, from A to Z, you map it out, follow it through. It says 2 years. You don't just say, okay, in 2 years we'll do this project. And then in 2 years after the design, an announcement, the minister goes to sleep. There's no monitoring, no daily, milestones accomplished. I think with more improved project management, we're going to get better results. Yeah.
Dr. Amadi, thank you very much. So you've said that this does not significantly impact or increase our electricity supply or make our situation here any better. But what would, particularly in light of the president talking to Siemens Energy about, I think, 4,000 megawatts energy plan, and also the government, the federal government, and our Gencos trying to pay off the 4 trillion naira debt that is owed to the Gencos. What significant next steps does the government need to do, or the industry need to do, to actually move the situation forward?
I think 2 things I would recommend. One is that we should be more transparent and procedural process. So look at this 4 trillion. That they try to pay to the Gencos. Maybe properly earned. But the question is, if you have a market, the market ought to pay. Debts in the market are natural. But this is a market that's weak. So first, audit. Why is the market unable to pay 4 trillion? Why can't we recycle it, defer payment? Because in every market, there are shortfalls that are deferred for the day. So why is government stepping in to bail them out? So you establish the reason so that you'll be able to avoid it. It's a problem that the rigor of thinking in government generally is weak. So people say, oh, we need this, they make a case, lobby, make a case, government pays it off. Now, what's the guarantee that we're not going to accumulate another 4 trillion down the road because of the weakness of the market? So transparency, process, laying things out and following through is critical, because this is also a managerial problem. You pay this money, even the regulator that ought to be the one making the case is left behind. It's not even on top of this market. Every debt in the market is a regulator's business to determine. So if I was when we're next chairman, we're going to sit back and say, let's review this. Some of these 4 trillion might be phony, might be just, don't exist, or might be things that people ought to do themselves, which they couldn't do, you're supposed to government. So I think there should be greater transparency, and there should be, firm hold on process. We make statements, we like the political side of it, but the managerial side of tracking things and saying what costs what and why should this pass and what should be done. The second thing I think is that, look, we have to admit that maybe we've not brought our best acts together, not just this government, for a long time on the power sector. There should have been continuity. Every 4 years you see real improvement. Real. And in the next 4 years you see real, measurable. But for some time now, I think we've not had real improvement in any way. We've been recycling the Siemens project. The Siemens was 1 and 2. If it was properly managed, we would have closed out on this project under President Buhari, and then people will now start a new phase of something different. So, but we still get back to where we were for 8 years, because those first phase, nobody drives them efficiently. We do the talking points, we travel, take advantage, but we don't drill them. So I want to see a lot more managerial focus on the power sector and less political focus.
Absolutely, and we will watch the development very carefully. Dr. Sam Amadi, we want to thank you for joining us on the morning show today. Thank you indeed.